It is Wednesday the 1st of April 2020. Now, I'm on the far side of the plot at the moment, and this is where we keep the nannies, and for a couple of days Sandy, who's the smallest of the nannies, she was a bit unwell, not full of beans like she normally is. Now, she had a bit of the runs yesterday, but she was at least eating a bit, and this morning I came over here and she ate a bit more, and she did as she did this afternoon as well. So there she is there, and she's much improved. Still a little bit way to go, but I think the runs have stopped, and she is eating fairly well, but I think just another day to go before I feel that we are out of the woods with her. And in the meantime, the two kids are fine, as are the others as well. Now, Sandy was bottle fed because she, like her sister, was when she was born, was rejected by her mum, Cole, and therefore that left us to raise the babies. And we had her weaned after about 3 months, and so after 3 months she was on solid foods, and typically we give them grass and leaves and branches and so on. And then when she became ill, she decided to readopt the bottle, because we feed the two little black kids with the bottle, and she became very interested in that a few weeks ago, and she remembered what the bottle was for, and when she became ill, decided to let her feed from it, because with their diarrhea they get dehydrated quite easily. So it was important therefore that we got some liquid into her, and that seemed to have done the trick, because she's properly hydrated now, and she's, as I say, she's settling down, but I'd give her another day before I can say for certain that she's fully recovered. And I'm getting mugged by goats at the minute. Yes, including Gertie, who's trying to eat the camera. I've just given them a handful of leaves and grass, and yep, she's quite happy with that. So on the road to recovery, nearly but not quite there yet. It is Thursday the 2nd of April 2020. I had a trip up to High Spen this morning, because we do our weekly trip to the farm shop where we sell the eggs. So all the eggs went up this morning, and then went up to get the animal feed up at Dow's Lane in Concert. And of course there was a queue of people to go into the store, and they were only letting us in one by one out, one in. So I had a 20-minute wait before I could get in, and I was after milk powder for the two kids, and feed for the chickens. So that was the morning, and sorry, I'm being mugged by two kids at the minute who are trying to pinch things on my balls. So here they are. Yeah, they have pinched something. Yes, they have been fed already, but are after more. How typical. So, as part-time farmers, although at the minute it feels like we're full-time farmers, given that the political side of my life is now just gone because of the pandemic. But as farmers, we're able to have that little bit more leeway to go and get out on the road a bit more. But we only go out as an absolute necessity. But what we're going to do now is I've already fed the nannies here on the far side, but I'm going to go and get them some more grass, because now that we're into April, the grass is starting to grow at a reasonable rate, and at some point we want to get them off the hay and onto grass. Now, it's been made more difficult for us to do that because the field that we have, the smallholding, it doesn't have adequate fencing for the goats, and the plan was always to move them up there and get them onto the grass, but to put them into paddocks. And at the minute we can't do that because we can't get the fence posts for the fencing that needs to go in. So we're kind of stuck with them still in what was effectively their winter accommodation here on the allotments, which is really annoying because we're having to buy feed to give to them. So where we can, we go out and collect or forage for the occasional sack of greenery for them. So a friend of mine works for a major retailer, and because of the pandemic crisis that we're all going through at the minute, the number of customers they had through the store on one particular day recently was very low. So they had loads of surplus stock at the end. Now normally it goes to charities that use it for feeding needy people, but for whatever reason the charities weren't able to collect all of this stuff, and it was about to go into a bin. Loads and loads of this food about to go into a bin, and the person who normally deals with the charities suddenly realised this was happening and got in touch with me and said, instead of binning it, could I take it for the animals at the Weaning's community garden? And that's where we keep our livestock at the moment. And I said, yeah, okay, then went down to collect it. Whole load of bread, which I gave to Sunnyside Chapel so that they could distribute it around needy people. And we had a great load of cucumbers. This is them here. Huge amount of packaging. Oh, it's packaging. Things are overpackaged these days. Anyway, that's the cucumbers. We had a huge stack of packaged pears as well. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn those cucumbers into pickled cucumbers. It'll be a sweet pickle that we'll do, and the pears will be turned into a chutney, and then when things are back to normal after this pandemic crisis, they'll all go, the produce that I've made, the preserves I've made, will be donated to the community garden at the Winnies, and they can sell them in their new cafe that they've just about finished building, and of course won't open for throughout the pandemic crisis, and they can raise funds with them. So that's my job for tonight, is to start chopping up those cucumbers and get them salted. Right, I have done one big bowl of cucumbers, bit of onion in there as well, all chopped up, salted to draw out the moisture. Now that's one big bowl. I still have that lot to do. I might have to come up with some other recipes for cucumber as well. Can't quite think of any at the minute, but I'll put my thinking cap on about that. But anyway, I think that's enough for tonight. We'll let that stand for 24 hours, get all that moisture drawn out, and then we'll put it into jars with the pickling vinegar. It is Friday the 3rd of April 2020. Now, a few days ago, Sandy, one of our little nanny goats, wasn't feeling too well, had a bit of the runs, but she seemed to be recovering, and I decided that we're only going to be out of the woods after a couple more days when she'd shown all the symptoms of being back to normal. Well, I'm pleased to say she is very much back to normal. There she is, chomping her way through a bit of hay. So, I'm having a bit of a poop as well. Right, okay then, so moving rapidly on, these two here, the two babies, are now 2 months old, and we are, as of today, going to start the process of gradually weaning them. So, you normally have 3 bottles of milk a day, so one first thing in the morning, one around about lunchtime, and then one in the night time at lock-up. Well, this lunchtime they're going to be having just half a bottle. But the good news is that they are quite happily eating hay and grass. Not quite started on the carrots yet, but I think the lumps of carrots that we feed them are possibly a bit too big for that. So, half bottles today. So I just brought them out the gate. And yes, still interested in the bottles, but as you can see, interested in the grass as well. Okay, you two? Very interested in the grass. I'll just leave them to it for the time being. And as you can see, Sweep is having a good go at the bottle. Oh, that's it, she's done. Right, and back to the grass. And Sushi is not interested at all in the milk at the minute, which is again a good sign as they gradually move off milk onto solids. For now, come down to the smallholding, and we're here to plant the potatoes because that is a cash crop for us. We'll hope to be selling them in the late summer and early autumn. Obviously, in this pandemic outbreak, the securing the nation's food supply is so important. So we are doing our bit, and what we've also done today is bring down the muck from the hen houses, because they're all cleaned out yet again just a few days ago. But we can't leave that stuff in sacks around the allotments where the animals are, because it's it's just not good for them, it's unhealthy. So it's got to be brought up here, and it's used as fertiliser on the ground. So we have been spreading it over the past few days on the past few weeks on the ground here, creating new beds. Some of these beds, a couple of these beds were made or created a couple of months ago, and have already been dug over. I've had the rotavator over them, so they'll be ready for planting up with potatoes as well soon. But I've just started creating a new bed here with the chicken muck from the big chicken house. Actually, not just with the big chicken house, but this is all 4 of the chicken houses, the hen houses. Lovely, rich manure. Really could do with it being rotted down a bit, but it'll rot down in the ground once this is all dug over. Oh, the grass is growing really well now, but unfortunately I can't get the goats on it until we've got the fencing sorted, and it looks as though we can't get the fencing sorted until the lockdown is over. So I'm a bit stuck in terms of the goats, or rather they're stuck over at the allotments. Right, so David is digging the trenches for the potatoes on this bed near the gate here. We did actually bring 2 of the goats with us so that they can have a wander around and a feed whilst we're here, but obviously they have to go back with us when we're finished. So this will be one of a number of beds that we'll use for potatoes. Right, so we now have 2 rows of potatoes in. Lots more still to go in, so a lot of digging still to come. It is Tuesday the 7th of April 2020. Normally tonight I'd be at the Sunnyside History Society, as I am every first Tuesday of the month. Like just about everything else, that is cancelled. So I'm doing the lock-up of the animals that David would normally do. It's been it's a hell of a day in terms of this pandemic, as the Prime Minister has went into hospital on Sunday, and everybody expected him out the next morning, and he's still there in intensive care. So it really is serious. And at the minute, I don't think. Well, they're talking about this pandemic curve flattening out, but that's 780 deaths, I think, in the previous 24 hours. It's I've never lived through anything like this before. It's just really beyond belief. One of the other problems that we're facing at the moment is that the shop that takes our eggs to sell is closing down for the next few weeks. So that means that the cash income we will get from that has now disappeared, and we're going to have a bit of a glut of eggs. So we will try and sell what we can, eat what we can, give away what we can, and donate what we can. But they're just about coming up to their peak production. So typically this all happens when we're going to have a glut of eggs on our hands. It is Sunday the 12th of April 2020. We are back here on the Smallholding, although I'm sitting at the end of the Land Rover because it's quite breezy today, and the camera's very good at picking up the sound of the wind. So we are here to get more of the potatoes, the seed potatoes planted. So I've just been planting up a whole load of Maris pear. It's a second early crop, and we've been putting them into a bed that was prepared. We've been preparing it over the winter. It's been manured, and I've dug the trenches. I've put the seed potatoes in, but we discovered that there's an awful lot of stones in this ground as well, so that really slowed me up when it came to doing the digging. My brother Andrew is on the Smallholding today as well, but because we are separate households, we are keeping our distance, so social distancing rules apply. So as you can see, he's some reasonable distance from me, but like me, he's been planting potatoes as well. So hopefully our Smallholding will be producing a good quantity of potatoes in the summer, and given the state of the food supply in the country, which we might be in by then we're probably going to need them big style. Right, so that's the bed fully planted up, and hopefully in the summer we will be harvesting a crop of Maris pear. Grass here is looking fantastic. Over there are the goat houses we built in March, and of course not able to put the goats in them because we're not able to get any timber for the fence posts. So as I say, all this beautiful grass here, and I can't put the goats on it. So I've picked a couple of sack loads of grass, and they'll get that tomorrow. But I really would love to be able to get them on here. They are going to love being out here. It is Wednesday, the 15th of April 2020. Now, I've talked earlier about the problems we've had getting timber for the fence posts for the goat paddocks to go on our big field on the Smallholding, and the pandemic lockdown had basically made it virtually impossible to get the timber. Well, today the virtually impossible was possible. We put in an order yesterday for timber at a place called Propagating, and this was the company we were wanting to use before the pandemic anyway, before the lockdown, and today they delivered, and we were a bit shocked that we were able to get it so soon. So shocked that when I was there I didn't have my camera with me, but I did have my phone. So that is the timbers there, and it's not exactly what we wanted before the lockdown, because we were going to get the square posts that size but with pointed ends. So we now need an enormous pencil sharpener to give them a point on them, so we'll probably do that with saws or a chainsaw. But it means that we can get started on building the fencing for the goats, so hopefully the goats will be moving from their winter accommodation that they're on at the moment onto that luscious green grass on the Smallholding. It is Thursday the 16th of April 2020, week 4 of the lockdown, but one of the things that we are allowed to do is to go for a walk, take a bit of exercise each day. For a lot of people that means going for a walk with the dog. We don't have a dog, but we do have 11 goats. So on this walk this evening we are joined by Sandy. So we're out here on Lottie's Wood, which is the woodland next to Sunnyside, and it's also the woodland next to the Winnies, where we have the goat paddocks. So it's a useful opportunity to have a look around, see what's growing, what's coming into blossom, see if there's any possibility of sort of good crops, see what's doing badly as well. At the minute, everything's earlier than it normally is, simply because the winter wasn't really a winter, it was just a sort of a modest autumn with the type of conditions that we had. So a lot of the leaves are out a bit earlier, the blossom, some of it's out a bit earlier as well. So we get the chance, as I say, to have a look around, see what's growing. It's a horse chestnut behind me, better known for its conkers. And it's coming into leaf again slightly earlier than we'd normally expect, and found a conker right underneath it. The point about the conkers is that we've never collected them before because we don't have a use for them until now, and that assumes that we get the pigs later this year, because so in the autumn we will actually be going around collecting the conkers, because they'll make an excellent food for the pigs along with acorns. Lots of cherry blossom out. That's always out before the leaves come out on the trees, and the cherries will be the first fruit crop that we'll pick in normally around about mid-June, sometimes a bit earlier, sometimes a bit later. Well, the hazel is coming into leaf, but it's gone through, or largely gone through, the process of producing the catkins. One or two still left, but not very much. So the catkins are always here before the leaves anyway, so we're quite early this year, because I noticed some at the end of January. And I have in my hand one hazelnut that I found on the grass just a moment ago. Lots of brambles springing into life. They'll tend to strangle just about anything else that grows in their way. The elder's quite well advanced now, and that'll be in flower within within a month, and that'll mean it is elderflower champagne making season. And there we have hawthorn, and that was one of the things I spotted in coming into leaf in February, which was about 6 weeks earlier than it normally does, and there's a lot of it around here, so lots of hawberries, great for making ketchup and jellies. Hawthorn is popular in hedgerows, and this old hedgerow here is packed full of it. The Lottie's Wood area is actually former agricultural land that was planted up by a couple of wildlife and natural habitat trusts about 20 years ago, I think it was. So it's still quite a young woodland, but we get things like the old hedge line still left here, so it's you can spot them as you walk through. This is blackthorn. We've not been too good on blackthorn crops in the last few years. The crop will be the sloes, the fruit, the sloes, and we use them for making gin, but we also use them in making things like fruits of the forest jelly and hedgerow jellies and so on, but not really had a good quantity of sloes in recent years. So hopefully this year we'll turn that around. You can see the trees are still relatively small. It's definitely not a mature woodland, and they were planted reasonably close to each other, so at some point the trusts that run this site will come along and thin them out. Nice bit of wild rose, and we'll be picking the rose hips later this year. Again, we use them in things like hedgerow jelly, but also for making rosehip syrup. This is an apple tree. Leaves are starting to come out, but no blossom as yet. That said, however, you can actually see some buds on here. These are the buds on a young oak tree, but oak is normally one of the last ones to come into leaf. So as you can see, it's pretty bare at the moment. Well, the nettles are coming through thick and fast. Good for making tea, or in flans, or for soup. Well, that's it. Allotted time of 1 hour for our daily exercise now used up. So we're back at the far side paddock, feeding the babies and about to do the lockup, as in our animal lockup, not as in the pandemic lockup. So here is Sandy back in the paddock, and I'm being mugged by Sweep. It is Friday the 17th of April 2020. I've had a bit of a cookery day today. Started off this morning making 9 jars of rhubarb chutney, and then this evening I have been making a load of vegetable soup from leftovers. I sorted through the fridge and found a load of manky old vegetables that needed to be used up, so they went in as well, and I found some leftovers and a half jar of sauce that was in the fridge. That went in as well. So it's all about using up and making sure that nothing goes to waste. So use up what we've got. It's so important in this pandemic to make sure that we value all the food that we have, and none of it is wasted. So this is the vegetable soup here, and that will do us for a couple more days as well. I did tonight, rather nice. The other day I was making pear chutney, so the peel and core all went into a pan, and I've boiled it all up tonight in a bit of water and strained it through the jelly bag here, and that will be used to make a pear drink. It is Saturday the 18th of April 2020. I'm on what we call the mill patch. It's right on the edge of the Winnies, and it's a place where if there was ever a medieval watermill in this area, it would have been on this spot here, because it is ideal for it. I have absolutely no evidence for a building like that being here, but it just lends itself to that. So that's why we call it the mill plot. But the reason I'm actually here today is because of a huge gooseberry bush that's on this patch here. This is it, and I've actually been taking cuttings from it today, because we have a lot of space that we want to fill at the top of our small holding. The space we want to fill with soft fruit, and gooseberries are very easy to grow, they help look after themselves. And at the top of the field we have a public footpath. We're quite happy for it to be there, but we want to sort of effectively create a barrier between the path and the rest of the field, so that people aren't walking over our land except along the footpath, and dogs aren't running free. So we've been taking cuttings from these, and what we aim to do is get this lot planted up into tubs and into compost. And the thing about gooseberries is that they send out the root system a lot easier. It's a lot easier to grow, because you can see it when the branches touch the ground. They start sprouting new roots. So we're hoping to be able to get a good number of these planted up, and we'll get them rooting first, then we'll get them planted up on the field. But of course that sort of soft fruit barrier will create an additional crop for us. Soft fruit is actually quite a good, I say money spinner. I suppose yes it is. It's a cash crop for us, in the sense that we turn it into preserves and we sell them as part of our income. And I think if we get sufficient next year, then it will be one of the crops that we would sell in little tubs at markets in the area. But the main priority would be to pick them to turn into things like ketchup, jam, chutney and so on, so we create a value added to it, and that way we obviously be able to boost our income. As I say, if some of them are left over, then we will sell them as fresh fruit. So these are the cuttings I've made in a bucket of water for the time being. We'll get them into compost in the next day or so. It is Tuesday the 21st of April 2020. I'm up here on our Marley Hill plot, and we are giving it up. We don't need it. This plot has become sort of surplus to our requirements since we bought the small holding down the road. So the small holding must be a few hundred times bigger than this allotment, so if we vacate it, then somebody else can take it on. And we've come up today to be able to sort of strip out everything that we need to take down to the small holding, so all the tools are going out. We've dug up some of the soft fruit bushes that went in a couple of years ago, and they'll be transplanted onto the small holding as well. And we've actually discovered some potatoes that needed picking as well. So half a bucket of potatoes, and I've also made some cuttings from some of the bigger soft fruit plants that have been here for forever basically. And there goes my shadow. And these we will put in pots and get them to sprout, and then they'll go up to the top of the smallholding. It's a bit overgrown, and we did kind of struggle with this one, with this plot, because it's some distance, well, I say some distance, it's a 15-minute walk from our house as opposed to the 1-minute walk for our Winnie's allotments. So whoever takes it on now is going to have a great allotment, but it's going to need quite a bit of work to bring it properly into use. And we're taking the tools with us. Okay, Marley Hill allotments, thank you very much for your years of work, and it's time to say goodbye. It is Thursday the 23rd of April 2020. We've had one or two problems recently with what appear to have been a low level of egg production by the hens, and what we think has actually happened is that one hen has been going around and eating all the eggs. We had one day where we had only 4 eggs from the hens, and normally would have had 15 or 16, and the hen house where most of them lay didn't have a single egg in it. So it may be that a hen has been eating eggs because she needs the calcium, and therefore we've put some grit down for them. But we also moved 3 of the hens to here, which is our goat paddock, where on the far side, where we keep the nannies, and we already had 3 chickens on here. We had the Barnvelders, and the reason for putting the Barnvelders on here a few weeks ago was so that we could get the eggs from them, which we could then incubate and hatch. And that means that we would have had Freddie the Barnvelder cockerel here, and the 2 hens, and the eggs now have gone into the incubator and are due to hatch in about a week and a half's time. So we brought 3 hens here last night, which means that not all the eggs are in one basket or one chicken run, as it were. So we're sort of trying to narrow down the opportunities for the hens to eating the eggs. But what it's also stimulated us to do is, because we don't particularly want the goats in here for much longer, we're actually going to take out from here the 2 babies and Sandy, so the 3 smallest goats, so the Sooty and Sweep are the 2 babies, Sandy. Take them to our near side allotment, which is much bigger than this goat paddock here, and put them in there with the boys. We're going to start by putting Sandy in. If there's a problem, if the boys get a bit riotous, then we'll stop the experiment and move her back. So fingers crossed that this is going to go well. But this is really just a temporary measure until we get the goat paddock set up on our main field. So that's Freddie and one of the Barnvelder hens, and the 3 hens that we brought over last night are these. They were part of a batch of chicks that we bought last year but are now properly matured, and one of them did indeed in fact lay an egg this morning, and that has already been collected. So we'll see how they get on here on this patch. Well, it looks as though we have solved this problem already about the eggs, because there's 5 there, and this is the hen house where they were breaking them all, and I already taken 5 eggs out of here this morning. So 10 eggs from this hen house is quite typical. Meanwhile, the boys seem to be much more interested in the hay that I've just given them to eat, leaving Sandy to wander around unmolested. Well, there's Sandy, and the others are still quite settled, so occasional bit of pushing from Perky, her father, but seem to be quite settled, so hopefully we don't have to take her back to the other side. The goats have been eating beetroot, which is why they've got pink beards at the moment. They look a bit like a punk. Well, we've now brought the two kids over, and there doesn't seem to be any problem. There's Sandy, getting a bit pushed around by her dad, Perky, but nothing particularly of concern. So, looks as though they're settling in okay. It is Thursday, the 30th of April 2020. Listen to what's in the background there. It's bacon sizzling away in the frying pan. It's the last bacon joint from our last pig that we got, or half pig that we got from Steve over a year ago now, and David has cured the last of the bacon joints, and a day or so ago it was sliced up into bacon, and we are enjoying, or about to enjoy, a bacon butty. So this is the rest of the bacon joint now cut into slices. It'll last us a couple of weeks, that. And then we'll need to sort out getting new pigs for this year. How we're going to do that in a pandemic lockdown is, well, I don't have the answer to that yet. It's about 9:30 in the evening, and just in the middle of doing the lock-up, so just done the main livestock allotment, and heading over to the far side now to lock up the hens there. I'm walking down the middle of the main road. Normally, even at 9:30 at night, there'd be traffic around, but in this pandemic lockdown, there's virtually no traffic, although I can see a car coming towards me, but numerous times I've just walked along the middle of the main road, and no traffic around. It's been fantastic, particularly at night, because obviously with pubs and restaurants and so on closed, and apart from some key workers being out and about, nobody's around at night. A few more cars through the day, and I've noticed them increasing recently, where people are going to work. Not many, but I think the figures have been going up. That car going past there, and it has been noticeable over the last few days that there's been an increase in the number of cars through the down the road, but at night time it's pretty much dead. And you think about, there's already talk about sort of taking steps to try and sort of at least have a roadmap towards lifting gradually the lockdown. But there are so many things I just don't want to go back to. I really don't want to have to go back to congestion and pollution on the roads. Loads of people who have been working from home could continue to do that. But it's just lovely to enjoy the peace and quiet without the infernal internal combustion engine pumping out pollution and noise all the time. I've just put the camera back on because the roads are absolutely silent now, couple of cars went past when I was recording the previous clip. I can just hear something up in the distance, might be another vehicle coming. But this is beautiful. Just so natural and quiet. Oh, the big issue is, how do we get back to something resembling normality, but we keep all the gains that we've made in terms of cutting noise and pollution? That's going to be the big task. But this is lovely, just being able to stand here without the sound of cars. Yeah, normally at this time in the evening, 9:30 in the spring, there'd be still be quite a bit of traffic on the road, but there isn't. Hurrah. So, let's take the opportunity to walk back home through the middle of the main road, reclaim the road for people, away from the traffic. Oh, it's so much easier to breathe as well. Air is so much cleaner. Oh, it's amazing, there's just nothing, no vehicles around. I'll show you. Oh, here comes a car. Coming up to the main junction in the village, in the Sunnyside. Traffic lights are working. It's getting a bit pointless now. And here's a taxi coming. But once he's gone past, he's parking. Right, I'll reclaim my bit of the road now. Don't even have to look out now for oncoming traffic. This is the pandemic has been awful. The lockdown has been awful. And obviously the sooner we get back to some degree of normality, the better. But we'll really have to work hard to try and save the good bits, which is really all about the environment. The sooner we can do that, the better.